UAPs, or more commonly known UFOs, have been a conversation spoken through the mouths of conspiracy theorists since very early days. And you'd think that with the vast amount of evidence, sightings, and stories of abductions and interactions, we'd have a clear answer on whether UAPs are actually real. Why is it that after all this time, we're still on the fence about whether humans have been visited by extraterrestrials? Well, that's the thing. UAPs are real. They've been confirmed by genuine government organizations on many occasions with real photographic evidence and video evidence to back it up. And despite the constant confirmations and press conferences regarding the sighting of UAPs, the public is still unaware of the fact due to the consistent lack of media attention. Is this a strange double-edged cover-up, with the government confirming the existence while also dulling down the media coverage in order to cover their asses? Or is there something stranger at play here? Now, I know you're probably thinking that this is another conspiracy theory YouTube video with the only evidence being old Dan from down the road seeing a flying saucer after his 6th shot of moonshine, but I pride myself on being as open as I possibly can in my videos, and I think the evidence that I'm going to share throughout this video will be convincing enough to convert even the biggest of skeptics. Today, lady and man, we are going through the entire history of UAPs and finally solidifying the truth about the infamous flying saucer. To start this journey, I think it's fitting to take a look back at the most infamous UFO sighting of all time, and arguably what really started this worldwide obsession with Martians from outer space. Let's go back to the start. Our story begins in Roswell, New Mexico, back in the summer of 1947. It was the early days of the Cold War, and Americans were on edge watching the skies. Amidst all this tension, something happened that would spark decades of speculation. In early July, a rancher named Mac Brazel came across some strange debris scattered through his property. This material was unusual, foil-like pieces that didn't seem to burn or bend, and some strange sticks that wouldn't break. After finding the mysterious debris, Brazel reported it to the local sheriff, who contacted the nearby Roswell Army Airfield, and on July 8, 1947, the Roswell Army Airfield issued a press conference releasing claims that they had recovered a flying disc. But within 24 hours, the military retracted this statement, claiming that it was all just a misunderstanding. The flying disc was soon after labelled as nothing more than a weather balloon by the military. But this contradicts the eyewitnesses that claimed they saw much more than just a balloon. Some reported seeing strange metallic material, and there were even rumours of alien bodies being recovered. Everyone knew that the military was hiding something huge. For a long time, we didn't have any real information about what really happened in Roswell. We had nothing more than a few eyewitness accounts and a single newspaper labelling it as a flying saucer crash. Until this man came along. Philip J. Corso, distinguished Army officer, World War II and Korean War vet with over 21 years in service, Pentagon official, and eventually, one of the biggest alien whistleblowers in history. Philip J. Corso's claims and interviews surrounding extraterrestrial technology and the Roswell incident are both controversial and fascinating.
So he took me back in the back room, and there was 5 crates. They looked like crates there. Lifted up a tarpaulin on one, I did, and here's this body there. At first I thought it was maybe a child, because it was only about 5 feet, shorter than 5 feet. It looked to me, and it was slowly on the floor. And then I took a good look at it, and this lasted about 10 or 15 seconds only. And I figured, what is that?
In his years later, he made waves in the UFO and conspiracy theory communities with allegations that he had directly handled alien technology, and it played a key role in incorporating it into American industry. Corso claimed that in 1961, he was assigned to a top secret position within the Pentagon as part of the Army's Foreign Technology Division. Here, he allegedly came into contact with materials recovered from the Roswell crash. Corso maintained that these materials weren't just ordinary debris, but they were highly advanced alien technologies. He asserted that his duty was to discreetly introduce these technologies into US private industries and scientific research sectors under the guise of domestic innovation. According to Corso, these materials were then reverse engineered and helped to accelerate developments in various technologies. The alleged items he handled included integrated circuit chips, microchips, fiber optics, night vision technology, Kevlar and super tough materials, lasers, and particle beams. According to Corso, the government chose to conceal the alien origin of these technologies, disguising their discovery as part of ongoing conventional research efforts to avoid public panic, and to prevent strategic advantage lost during the Cold War. So following the release of his book, Corso became a significant figure in UFO circles, appearing in various interviews to elaborate on his claims. And in these discussions, he often expressed frustration with the secrecy surrounding extraterrestrial encounters and technology, maintaining that the US government had indeed engaged in an obvious systematic cover-up. I think one of the biggest issues that skeptics have with UAP sightings and so-called alien experience is the undeniable fact that 90% of these stories come from the US. Why, after all these years, do aliens only ever visit the land of the Big Mac? And I think there's many theories to go with this claim because it's not entirely untrue. I think the simplest way to put it is that UFO sightings happen all over the globe. In fact, it's probably more likely that roughly only 10% of UFO sightings actually take place in the US. But 90% of all documented UFO sightings come from the US. And this is simply because people believe it more there. The US is infamous for conspiracies ranging from urban legend creatures to UFO sightings, and they've become quite known to be the hotspot. So the people living there are much more likely to ever report seeing something strange in the sky compared to someone living in like New Zealand or something. And on top of that, more people around them are likely to believe it, and that leads to more publication. In fact, if you dig deep enough, you'd find that some of the most clear examples of real UFO sightings actually take place outside of the US. It was April 6, 1966, a normal school day at Westall High School, located in the Melbourne suburb of Clayton South. Students were out on the sport field at around 11 AM doing physical activities, when they suddenly noticed something strange in the sky. Witnesses described it as a silver or metallic saucer-shaped object, about the size of a car. It hovered silently, reflecting the sunlight before starting to move in ways that defied anything that they had ever seen before. It darted back and forth, making rapid movements, almost like it was bouncing through the air. For about 20 minutes, the students and teachers watched as this mysterious craft performed maneuvers that seemed impossible. So, curiosity got the better of some students, and as the craft began moving towards a patch of nearby grassland known as the Grange, many of them chased after it, along with a few of their teachers. And it was here that they claimed they saw the object land briefly, leaving unusual impressions in the grass. Witnesses reported that it then took off at an incredible speed and was soon joined by a second object in the sky. Both craft shot away into the distance, disappearing in seconds. Shortly after the incident, witnesses reported seeing what appeared to be military personnel arriving at the scene. The students and teachers were instructed to stay away from the area, and some reported being warned to keep quiet about what they'd seen. Witnesses described military-like men taking photos of the site and combing through the grass as if they were searching for evidence or recovering materials. Officially, there's been no satisfactory explanation for what happened at Westall. The Australian government has never provided any official documentation or files on the incident, and the military has denied any involvement. And of course, just like the Roswell incident, it was labelled as a weather balloon. Okay, so the next issue that skeptics seem to have about UFO sightings is the lack of any real credible sources of the alleged photographs. It's always a low quality image coming from some random source with no real evidence that it wasn't tampered with. There's a reason why a lot of scary videos are always filmed on a PS2 iToy camera, because no one ever notices the flaws if you can't actually see the flaws. And I don't blame the skeptics. It's hard to believe when you're not given much to actually believe in. But what about the sightings that are clear? What about the sightings that do come from credible sources? Now, it probably seems like I'm using this video as a cheap excuse to go over random stories of UFO sightings. with nothing more than a Wikipedia page and a couple photographs to show you. But bear with me, they all tie together more than you think. It was September 4th, 1971, and a team of Costa Rican government surveyors were conducting aerial photography over the Arenal region. Their mission was to capture images for a hydroelectric project, photographing the terrain to understand the region's geography. For this purpose, they were flying in a twin-engine aircraft fitted with some of the highest resolution cameras for the time, and automated timers that captured images every 20 seconds. As the plane flew over Lake Cote, one of the automated cameras captured a single frame showing a large, silver disc-shaped object hovering over the lake. The object appears in perfect detail, showing a classic flying saucer shape that we often see in UFO reports. A metallic-looking, slightly domed craft with sharp, clean edges. The photograph taken that day is remarkably clear, unlike many UFO images which are often blurry or out of focus. This photo captured the object in broad daylight and has been analysed by various experts including government officials, scientists and UFO researchers. And to this day, no one has been able to explain the image, and no one has been able to prove that it was a hoax. The Costa Rican Institute of Geography, which managed the flight, investigated the image extensively. Despite all their expertise, the officials couldn't find any logical explanation for the object. It wasn't a reflection or a shadow, and it wasn't an artifact from the camera. Technically speaking, this was a UFO. For years, the photo has been studied by researchers. Some experts, including photographic analysts, concluded that the image is in fact genuine, with no signs of tampering or double exposure. The shadows and lighting are consistent with the time of day and the plane's position. UFO sightings are constant. It's like every week we hear stories about UFOs, UAPs, flying saucers, aliens, Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster. It's hard to take a lot of these seriously. I mean, people do anything for a little bit of attention now. Without a reputable source, it's almost impossible for people to believe you. But what happens if the sightings come from the most reputable source of them all? What happens if the sightings come straight from the military? It all began in the early hours of December 26 at RAF Woodbridge in Suffolk, England. At the time, it was used by the US Air Force, and American personnel were stationed there during the Cold War. Just after midnight, several servicemen noticed strange, colourful lights descending into the nearby Rendlesham Forest. They thought it might be a downed aircraft, so they grabbed their gear and they headed out to investigate. As they entered the forest, they reported seeing a glowing object, metallic in appearance with a triangular shape. The air around it felt charged, almost electric, and some witnesses described the object as hovering slightly above the ground, casting a mysterious, pulsating light over the forest floor. One of the men, Sergeant Jim Peniston, later claimed that he got close enough to touch the object. Over the next 2 nights, the strange lights returned, and by then the Deputy Base Commander, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Holt, decided to lead a team into the forest to investigate.
150 feet or more from the initial, I should say, suspected impact point. Okay, the sample, you're going to mark this sample number 1. Yes. Have them cut it off and include some of that sap and all. Is between indentation 2 and 3 on a pine tree about 5 feet away, about 3.5 feet off the ground. You see those other trees here that are damaged in similar fashion?
Yes, off towards center to landing.
Okay, why don't you take a picture of that and remember your picture, and you got to be writing this down. It's going to be on the tape. Looking directly overhead, one can see an opening in the trees plus some freshly broken pine branches on the ground underneath. Looks like someone came off about 15 to 20 feet up. Some small branches about an inch or less in diameter. 0148, we're hearing very strange sounds out of the farmer's barnyard animals. It's very, very active, making an awful lot of noise.
There it is.
Hey, I see it too. What is it?
We don't know, sir.
So can I get some? Yeah, it's a strange, small red light. Looks to be out maybe a quarter to half mile, maybe further out.
Now it's coming up. Hold up. There we go. It's about approximately 4 foot off the ground. It comes ahead to 110 degrees.
To this day, the recordings and report from Rendlesham remain some of the most compelling UFO evidence in existence. Holt and the other witnesses stuck to their stories, insisting that they encountered something truly out of this world. The British Ministry of Defence conducted an investigation, but officially, they deemed the incident no threat to national security. And just like that, the case was closed. There was quite a long gap between the Rendlesham Forest incident and the next UFO sighting confirmed by the military. But that's not to say we didn't have any credible sightings along the way, and some of these sightings can't be denied. How does an entire town orchestrate an in-depth hoax about seeing the exact same lights in the sky, pair it with footage from multiple different angles, and thousands of eyewitness reports? It's almost impossible to deem this one as fake. The sun had just set over Phoenix, Arizona, and a strange, breathtaking sight appeared in the sky. A series of bright, glowing lights in a massive V formation, gliding silently over the city. Thousands of people are watching, and they all see the exact same thing. The lights first appeared around 7:30 p.m. in a small town in Nevada. Witnesses reported seeing a massive triangular-shaped craft with lights on its edges, moving slowly and silently through the sky. The lights continued south, traveling hundreds of miles over the course of a few hours, crossing into Arizona and eventually reaching Phoenix around 8:30 that night. By the time they arrived in Phoenix, thousands of people were looking up towards the sky. The lights were bright and arranged in a distinct V shape, stretching across the night sky. Some witnesses described them as a series of glowing orbs. Others believed they were all attached to a single solid craft that was so big that it blocked out the stars as it moved overhead. People from all walks of life reported seeing the lights. Police officers, pilots, families, and even the governor of Arizona, Fife Symington, who would later call it otherworldly.
Well, I saw a huge craft just kind of come right over Squaw Peak. That was, it was just breathtaking.
This wasn't just a few people claiming a UFO sighting. There were thousands of eyewitnesses, all sharing the exact same story. So, the event quickly made national news, and speculation exploded. Explanations ranged from military aircraft to flares, and of course, the possibility of an extraterrestrial visit. However, the military initially denied any aircraft in the area, only later suggesting that the lights might have been flares dropped during a training exercise at the Barry Goldwater Range. But for many, that explanation didn't add up. The lights seemed to move in formation, not like flares drifting in the wind, and they traveled hundreds of miles, which flares simply can't do. Nobody could actually figure out what the lights were, and there was never a definitive explanation as to what it was. As much as many people don't want to believe, it's hard to come up with an explanation that doesn't involve UFOs.
Today marks 26 years since the mysterious Phoenix lights appeared over the valley.
And we still don't know what it was, but there are plenty of theories out there. It was the evening of March 13th, 1997. People across Arizona, especially here in the valley, reported seeing a silent, miles-long V-shaped group of lights gliding quietly overhead. Was it a military mission, a prank perhaps, or visitors from outer space? The questions and confusion over the sighting have only grown during the prevailing years.
So you'd think by now that the government and military organizations would stop with the secrets and finally share the truth on UFO sightings. I mean, it had all but been confirmed with the sightings that we'd gone over. Sure, we've had whistleblowers, ex-government agents that came out and told their stories, but the sad thing is, most of these people are labeled as loonies, classic tinfoil hat-wearing, Bigfoot-loving weirdos. But as time moved forward, the military realized that it was starting to get impossible covering these sightings up. Things were starting to get a bit messy behind closed doors. So, to clear the air, the Pentagon themselves declassified and released 3 confirmed UFO sightings to the public, in a bid to calm down the mess behind closed doors. Weirdly enough, it wasn't as big of a deal as you'd think. The world's population had finally been shown real video evidence of unexplained, non-human technology in our airspaces, and no one cared. Because honestly, it was barely televised. The problem is, for the Pentagon, what they assumed would calm down their situation only made things worse. More and more leaks started to come out, and more whistleblowers were ready to tell their story. But this time it was different. This time, they had proof. In 2023, a US congressional hearing was held to publicly address something that was once dismissed by the world: UFOs, now called UAPs, or unidentified anomalous phenomena. Top government officials, former intelligence agents, and even a decorated whistleblower testified before Congress, calling for transparency about these mysterious encounters and urging officials to tell the public what they know. The hearing took place in July 2023, and for a moment so historically significant, wasn't really publicized. At the heart of this testimony was former US intelligence officer David Grush, who made headlines by claiming that the government had been secretly studying non-human spacecraft for decades. Grush, who had worked in the US Air Force and with the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, alleged that not only had the government recovered what he called non-human craft, but they had also retrieved biological remains. Grush went on to say that these programs were deeply hidden and kept from Congress and the American public for years. He told the lawmakers that he faced retaliation for speaking out, but felt that it was his duty to tell the truth.
Thanks. And Ms. Luna.
Mr. Grush, in speaking to you yesterday, I just wanted to follow up on Representative Raskin's questions. In the last couple of years, have you had incidences that have caused you to be in fear for your life for addressing these issues?
Yes, personally.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want everyone to note that he's coming forward in fear of his life. To put in perspective, if they were really not scared about this information coming out, why would someone be intimidated like that?
But Grush wasn't the only voice at the hearing. Two former Navy pilots, Commander David Fravor and Lieutenant Ryan Graves, testified as well. They described their own encounters with mysterious objects that defied explanation. Fravor recounted the famous 2004 Tic Tac incident, where he and his squadron encountered a smooth, pill-shaped object that moved at incredible speeds and seemed to have no visible propulsion system. Graves shared that during his time in the Navy, such encounters were disturbingly common. He even went so far as to say that these UAPs posed a serious risk to pilots and were seen almost daily off the East Coast. Remember that these men aren't some run-of-the-mill conspiracy theorists. These men are highly decorated members of the military and government. Lawmakers from both parties pushed for more transparency, demanding to know if there were secret programs that even they weren't aware of. And if so, what were these programs hiding? By the end of the hearing, it was clear that the UAP issue had moved beyond fringe science and into a legitimate topic of national interest. The call for declassifying information on UAPs gained momentum, and as public officials and citizens alike demanded the truth, were these objects advanced foreign drones, a breakthrough in aviation technology, or were these objects something else? We finally had the answers we've been waiting for, confirmation of real alien technology, but nobody could even imagine what came next.